Welcome to the Digital Exchange. Today, my guest and I will be discussing something every owner cares about, but few projects actually deliver: asset data and the owner's digital truth. Let's get into it. The last episode, y'all remember I had a guy I told you I didn't like him. I really don't like this one. So,
Yeah, I
Mark,
don't like you either.
Mark, thank you for joining us today.
Yeah,
I know
my pleasure, man.
a lot of people may not know who you are, or I do. I mean, a lot of the functions that I've needed over the years, you've always been my go-to. Talk to us a little bit about who are we talking to today?
So I'm Mark Mergenschroer, started in the industry in 96. I was that gopher. I did the blueprints. I ran and got coffee. I got donuts. I smelled the ammonia, and then I transitioned into designing fire sprinkler systems. I don't know if you knew that or not, but I was a licensed fire protection designer, and we worked on hospitals, kind of grew into an engineering firm in 2004 is really where my career took off. Went to work for Tinsley Mullen Engineers in Little Rock. They taught me how to respect an owner, how to work for an owner through an engineering firm. And it taught me that owner advocacy. And when BIM come in, they encourage that. And so I look from an owner's lens or a technician's lens, and that's kind of how I apply everything. I'm just a small country boy from Arkansas that absolutely loves the people in this industry, loves the industry, and working with people like you, it's just absolutely been amazing. I love it.
I don't know if you want me to bring this up, but I have to ask you. I met you through Autodesk, and I know you guys had some restructurings going on there. So I'd be remiss to say I won't miss my interactions with you basically every month or a couple of weeks. So what's your plan now? Are you pissed?
No, I'm not. It's business.
Yeah.
It is absolutely business. So let's just address the elephant in the room. Yeah, I'm no longer at Autodesk. That's okay. So I've kind of spun up a pro bono for the intern brochure, or
Okay.
I'm sorry, AeroSteward.
Okay.
And I'm going to be okay. I'm going to be around. I'm not leaving the industry. There's no animosity towards Autodesk. I've got some amazing friends. I've got people, teammates. I've met amazing people like you and AB that you had on last week. So things are going to be fine.
Good. In 2017, 2018, I remember doing the first iteration of a digital twin. And I remember searching for somebody who could help. We ended up doing a digital twin in InfoWorks, GIS, stuff like that. So I hear people now talking about, oh man, we've been doing it, digital twins 25, 30 years. I was like, man, when I was searching, couldn't find anybody. But I want to reel this into another part of what I was searching for. Nobody knew, and that was assets.
Mhm.
When we dove into, hey, let's go do a bigger asset, we passed proof of concept, let's spend some real money. When we got to looking at assets, Mark, I don't remember anybody besides you and maybe somebody else who could remotely tell me something about assets. I need the real story because I don't understand these people who've been doing this for years. Is it smoke and mirrors?
In a way, yes. And in a way, no.
Okay.
do you remember Hollywood, BIM? I mean, we've got some Hollywood twin out there as well.
Okay, true.
How did I learn about an asset back then? So around that same time frame that you mentioned, I was working at a hospital in Texas. They had something called a Kobe spreadsheet. That was
Okay.
did I say that out loud?
Yes, you did.
That was supposed to be attached to a Revit model, and they were supposed to match up. And so, I have a background in building commissioning, or the company, that I worked for did. So as this hospital was being built, about a year and a half before this big hospital was going to open, the CMMS administrator got involved, and he said, nothing matches. They had a BIM execution plan, but when you walked down the corridor, the number of lights didn't match what was on the Kobe spreadsheet. They also didn't match what was in the Revit model, and the Revit model didn't match what was in Kobe. So that was in 2014, 2015, somewhere right around in there.
You see what I'm saying?
Yeah,
So
that's real.
It is. Why is asset data such a pain point across the AECO industry?
You want the real truth?
That's what you know. You know me, man. It's
And
real and more real.
so, and part of this is due to legal and liability. I want to preface this, but we as an industry deliver what we want to deliver to the owner, or deliver what we think that owner needs, because we've never talked to that owner to find out exactly what they need or what their definition of an asset is. Sometimes we forget to ask, well, what's your definition? As the industry has evolved and owners have evolved, we've got a better definition of an asset, but I think our contracts are still locked in to a handover at the end of the project. But that's not when handover should start, or that's not when the asset tracking data should start. The asset tracking should start at planning with a pre-planned asset ID in the CMMS that is then handed over to the planning and designs teams to actually incorporate into the process.
So there's a big disconnect with what owners expected then and what owners respect now and what they want to receive.
Yep.
You
That's
kind
fair.
of touched on some of that bit disconnect, but I know myself the way I handle things is, like I said, we went visited with our operation and maintenance, our CMMS team, and we thought that if you go with the end in sight at the beginning, then we can have something that when that's handed over, that we have a better product. I've talked to some owners who never visited with their operation and maintenance. They never visited with CMMS. And I'm like, y'all do know that that's like 80, 70, 80% of the cost of that asset. Is
That's
there
right.
something we're missing on that big disconnect that we need to discuss?
Oh yeah, for sure. You know, I was in Boston in 2022 at a conference of healthcare. It was the healthcare facilities conference. And I asked that room of 250 facility managers, how often do you speak to your design and construction, or do you speak to your design and construction department? And like in this room of 250 people, only 5 people raised their hands.
Yep.
And I'm like, how do you get the data that you need? And then what's funny is the person that ran that hospital that I did in 2015 with that big Kobe spreadsheet actually pulled me out afterwards. And he's like, that's what was wrong with what we did. And I'm like, yeah, it is. You didn't coordinate all that data. Nobody talked. The architect, the engineer, the planners all thought they knew what you needed. And they over delivered, but they under delivered. So they gave them more data than they needed, and they gave them the wrong data that they needed. And that's what's happening in the industry. That's what I see, at least. How do we fix that? I think with people like you, with people like Alex, people like Jacob that you mentioned on the last call, we've got to give the owners confidence to go to the design and construction teams, and that it's okay to go to the design and construction teams. I think it's just we've had the planning, design, construct process for so long, and we've did it one way for so many years that we're afraid of change in how we hand over a project. Part of that's legalities. I understand that.
I
But
get it.
that's where I see it is we've got to change how we look at data and what data we look at. Yeah, there is legal data that needs to be handed over, and there's facilities or operational data that needs to be handed over. And I don't think we differentiate between those two.
I'm glad you brought up design construction because, we have AECO. If you go around the industry, you hear a lot of people talk about the PLM, the project lifecycle. That's only to design, construction, and handover. But we need to talk about the asset lifecycle.
Yep.
So we got all these phases. We got design, we got construction, we got turnover. So let's go to the design portion of this right quick. How you think owners should define their requirements in these phases, whether it's project lifecycle management or project asset lifecycle management?
So let's turn this back on you for a second.
Okay.
I'm going to ask you a question. Is a BIM execution plan operations plan?
Yes, yes, yes.
It is.
I've been gut punched, Mark, to where I didn't do the things that we talking about. You cannot hide your sins in design construction because it's gonna come back up.
It
And
is, yes.
we're on our 5th iteration of a standard because each project that we've had, I've learned something to where I'm saying as part of our requirements, as part of our kit of parts, as you're talking about. To me, that's what my operational foresight is through that document, to kind of give you an insight of what we're wanting you to do for us, to fulfill for us. Now, I don't like people that just hand over, hey, here's our standard, here's our project execution. I'm not going to do that. I mean, I'm going to hand it to you as a guiding light, but I'm going to work with you along the way to make sure that we're
There you go.
getting what we're wanting.
And see, what I think where some of the disconnect is the people behind the BIM execution plan don't understand operations.
I had to go and visit with my O&M, my operation and maintenance, and my CMMS. They're the one who's taking care of the asset. What parameters do you want? Why would I want a full Kobe sheet and they only want 5
That's right.
rows? It's about the system.
That's correct. You know, and one of the things, and I know you've heard me talk about this. We have specs. We have architectural specs. We have civil specs. We have building commissioning specs. So we have all these specifications. In 90% of the cases, where does that specification set end? At
Remember,
construction.
I just talked about that project lifecycle management.
Why don't we have an operational spec or a facility data spec with those parameters that you just talked about actually in the spec? Because we do a 3-name spec for electrical, right? Or we specify that we want a certain manufacturer, or we want a certain software, we want some of this. We specify that. It's okay to do that for what we need for facilities and operations as well. Yeah, that's what we did at Arkansas Children's Northwest, is we built a facilities data spec. We went to the operations team, but what we also did is we went to the building commissioning team. We also went to the design team and built that spec. Started out at 35 pages. Once we ended up talking to all those teams and gathering all of that information, it went to 75 pages. The commissioning team and the construction team wanted to know what piece of data they needed to collect. We actually specified not organization, but types like general contractor, commissioning agent in the specs to collect the data. You know, and we handed over 60 gig of data 92 days before that hospital ever opened. Now, was it all correct? No, but we got a jump start on the operations, and it really changed the way they opened that hospital, because we knew what data we wanted. We knew when we wanted the data, and we could track it because we had the asset information kind of pre-planned before the hospital ever really come out of the ground.
I was just about to ask you about what's a successful digital turnover, but no, in Mark fashion, you couldn't let me have my moment.
Hey, you are the bright and shining star in the industry. I'm just one of those shooting stars that go off every once in a while. So let's talk about that. Apply that to a bigger picture.
Okay.
So Arkansas Children's Northwest, we were collecting the data. We were looking at the data. We actually started setting up, and the operations and maintenance in the CMMS as well. And we had some custom built air handling units by a major manufacturer. So we go up, we work with the teams, and there is a preventive maintenance procedure in there to change the belts. Guess what? These were direct drive. You don't have belts.
Wow.
And this was on a project where we managed the data, and we still got that. But we caught it. Charles Coppage, Chuck Neese, and Katie Murph and I all put our heads together. And so this was before any of this really cloud-based software. So we were told by the company that we were going to do this in, or Charles was sitting on a plane, sitting by an executive of that company, and was told, there's no way you can make happen what you just told me you want to happen. Charles come to Little Rock and said, Mark, they said you can't make this happen because the softwares just wouldn't talk. How can I figure out how to make a change and how to do something different in the industry? And so that's when we started coming up with these different ways of looking at how we wanted to do the data, how we wanted to do the models, how we wanted to plan. Because that hospital, we were planning to double the size of that hospital in 10 years. They're already adding on to that hospital. It's almost completed, and that it opened in 2018. I consider that my first digital twin. Even though it wasn't a digital twin, we looked at data and tying data to the operations, to the space planning. After coming off of that hospital in Texas and seeing how that worked, it really made me change how I thought a project needed to be delivered. And then when I had the opportunity to move to Autodesk in 2019, I really jumped at it because I thought I had the platform to start making some changes in how we did things and to make our industry better.
What do you think some of the biggest risks owners face trying to control that digital truth narrative?
Bad data. What's missing in today and whatever software we use to build this building, we need to have that right data transition into the owner systems. And I know we're going to talk about this a little later with Alan, what I like to call Alan Iverson. I mean AI. Yeah, when me and you were growing up, AI was Alan Iverson, right?
Allen Iverson, yes.
That's right. But the risk the owners take of trusting the data coming from design and construction is a huge risk. I have a buddy, he got handed over brand new energy plant for this system. You know when he got his asset data and all his O&M information?
I'm liking where you're going with this.
14 months after that plant was delivered.
You got a lot of stuff that is kind of gone by the wayside by then.
That's right. And, this particular hospital during that time had a tornado pass within a half a mile of it.
Yeah.
They went on backup emergency generation when the tornado warning went off. Just think about the implications of that if those generators didn't work properly. In Seattle, I had over 400 healthcare facility managers in the room. I asked the question, when do you get your operations and maintenance data? When do you get your handover? Before substantial completion. I had one person in the hand go up in the room, a 400. It was Arkansas Children's Northwest. I'm like, all right, what about your first 0 to 3 months? I think it was about 15% of the room. 3 to 6 months, another 15%. 6 months to a year was almost the entire room. And then I had a handful of over a year. So it's an industry trend, Robert.
Yep.
And it scares me. I know things have improved since 2018.
Watch yourself.
Okay. Maybe
Watch
things
it.
have not improved
Well,
since 2018.
I don't want to say it has a hazard, but some people still don't know how to use the tool in the toolbox.
That's correct.
We've had discussions about assets, and because if you're in BIM, you got 3D, you can do things that track that asset. You can, upon delivery to the site, you can go and get the make, model, manufacturer. You can do a lot of things that happens that speed up that 14-month process you're talking about.
That's right. And that's with clear ownership. Who really owns that piece of equipment from planning, design, and construction? The owner does.
The owner.
Because they're paying for it.
Yes.
And then who's defining the standards? The owner should be. Who should be validating that through planning, design, and construction?
That's why I said, Mark, I think we need to be careful on that because some people, boy, man, I tell you, some people aren't willing to step off the bridge into troubled water.
That's right. I jumped off the deep end. Maybe that's why I don't have any hair. I hit my head on bottom.
So what type of things do you think we can put in place to kind of ease that a little bit and not just overwhelm owners?
What if, instead of focusing on contracts and what those deliverables are of the contract, what if we focused on the outcomes?
Well, hang on. I want to stop you on there because that's a double-edged sword. And I say that because if you don't put some sort of contractual language, they don't have to do things. So we want to make, even though we want a deliverable, we have to put things in there so they don't come back later and go ching, ching, ching.
There you go.
It's something extra. So I like what you said. However, we have to have something to support what
So we got to focus on both. One of the things I was just amazed by when I was talking to a contractor and they were looking for errors and omissions in our engineering design set. And they actually had a whole department that did that. And they saved that data until after our drawings were out. And I was just like, man, that's not doing anybody any good. And I understand why they did that, but it's only hurting the end game.
100%.
And that's where I think I've tried to do things the right way. If we truly start focusing on if my family's life depended on that hospital or my career depended on that office building, we might look at things a little differently. And then with Ed and Rusty at TME and that owner's advocacy and just Mark, do the right thing. It's valuable data for the next 50 years, in some cases 75 years. And when I started working with operations and when I did the worked with the CMMS at Arkansas Children's Northwest and worked with Maximo at that hospital in Texas, it opened up a light bulb for me. This is why our engineering data it's not necessarily wrong,
Right.
but it's not what is needed for the long term. And so what's needed is a blend of what we're doing today with a focus on what data do we need to enable for operations? What is the validation process? And then are we truly assigning accountability? Or is there accountability? We've got some brilliant people working in these facilities that know that data and can look at it and tell us if it's right or wrong. We need to leverage that.
That leads me into Mark, you said something about governance of the data. What kind of tools do you suggest? And of those tools, how do we standardize that validation project process to say, you know what, we actually got what we wanted out of it? And that's a question I'm asking that you very well could throw back and go, Robert, I need to ask you that, you the owner, what is it that you want? I know a lot of people who have a CMMS system. They got all these
Mhm.
systems. They never done a digital maturity of their system to kind of know what is it that we have. And of that, what we have, do we have a roadmap? How does data flow in? What's bi-directional? What's not? What's integratable? What's not? There's
Uh,
a lot of things that we could talk about. Well, before we let, I know we're gonna touch on AI, but you gotta I wanna if we're gonna talk about AI, let's feed it something so that it can give us a good answer.
I got 3 or 4 answers for you here.
Okay?
What is governance for all these tools? Yeah, I think we mistake governance for control.
I can relate to that.
Governance is care.
Yeah.
And sometimes I think we lose that thought process. You know, we can have all of the best technology in the world and fail if we don't care about what we're doing or if we don't have somebody governing all of that data. And a lot of these support the life cycle, but in that life cycle terminology, is that really operations or is that just a project closeout? We're still very siloed, right?
Yes.
Even though we like to talk about bringing down those silos, asset information and planning and design through construction, commissioning into operations without losing context or intent. We should be stewards of the data. We should be
100%.
stewards of the project. Technology shouldn't replace the stewardship. The life cycle actually matters more than the platform. And that's where I think AI is really going to help connect us. But technology can serve service, right? But if we don't have clear governance, clear standards, clear validation, we're not going to get the real truth of the data. And I think everything ties back to understanding what the operators need, or better yet, that guy that's in the field that's pouring the concrete, or the lady that is out there that's placing that beam. You know, I remember when we were in Portland, you actually had to fly back to Dallas early because a bolt was in the wrong place or
Yeah.
a stud was in the wrong place.
Yep.
Those things matter. If we use technology right, if we govern technology right, I think that will help us in the answers. But I think we've got to slow down to speed up.
I always listen, sometimes when we're at conferences and these in sessions, people sometimes like, Robert, you quiet. You're progressive, but you're quiet. And I'm like, I always want to allow myself to listen and learn. I'm not gonna ever say I know it all. But here's something that I've been using with my team, and I call it the 4 C's. 4 C's of an asset is something that we're gonna have that's got some content, it's gonna have some chronological data, it's going to have some contextual data, but guess what? The fourth part of that, it has to be connected.
Oh,
Okay, it
yes.
has to be connected. That's why, to me, if you got 4 C's to your asset, you don't talk about AI replacing people. You talk about AI optimizing the process.
That's right.
But why not make it work smarter for you and use it in that format? Last year at AU, you had that session, and I could have said something because you asked some questions that I probably should have answered. But
Probably.
you
Yes.
know what I mean? But I want to see, what are people doing? What are people doing? What are they saying? So maybe I'm gonna look at my pain points, because if somebody's talking about it, you got to have a conversation.
I know people are going to laugh at this because they know how much I like to talk, but I love to listen. And that's how I've gained. I taught building commissioning at Arizona State for 15 years. You know how many buildings I've actually commissioned? I'm not going to answer that, but it's not many.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. But you
Yeah.
see what I'm saying, man? You got to look at, if me and you were to start going asking owners, what's your principles in practice? What do you have here? I don't know if we're gonna get that, Mark.
We won't, because we've got to educate the owners. One of the things I love what you said there is education of owners is we hear common data environment, but you said it right in connected data
Mhm.
environment is we need these softwares connected. Robert, I'm so glad Tara made me switch from healthcare to airports because it's opened my eyes to see, like, with the geospatial, airside, landside, all of this, how it all should connect, but it's completely disconnected.
Yes.
Why? Why is it so disconnected? Part of it's owners, part of it's the software companies, and part of it's we just don't know why or how we need to connect that. So the connected assets. So AI could help us validate data, right? Clarify the assets per se. It can help us detect some gaps and surface patterns
Mhm.
that humans wouldn't see until later on, right? Potentially. Wouldn't it be awesome if AI could connect all these platforms, kind of like what we've been talking about, so that if somebody wants to work, let's just say in Autodesk, in Procore, in Esri, in Trimble, in other software, they could do that. But then AI flow the data from those softwares into the owner's platform. Wouldn't that be
Now,
fantastic?
I'm gonna tell you, there's some parts of that is happening, that is normalizing data. Trying not to go that far into that, because that's some
That's
later
a whole
stuff.
other
But yeah,
discussion.
that kind, some of that's happening. But some of the stuff that's stopping that is some of the security of it is not, is still in
That's correct.
question, but there are some data flows that's kind of normalizing everybody working in their environment.
So here's what I don't see. I don't think it can define what matters to an owner. I don't know that it can truly decide what the truth is. That's debatable, and who has ownership of the AI and the intent of the ownership of the AI and the accountability of the AI.
So you talked about owners. So you got healthcare, aviation. You got some of these that are high security, that
Mhm.
sometimes, are we in our own way that we're not letting things happen?
No, because we've got to have security. We need to find a way to build an internal AI on, like, your network or other the owner's networks so that it can start pulling that. If we could figure out the best ways to use the AI internally, that's the best way we're gonna do it.
Give me one thing you think an owner could change, one habit that could make them somewhat more successful in what they're doing.
Stop delivering data and start delivering connected truth. Because right now, in a lot of cases, we treat the data as a handoff and forget it. We close out projects and we move on, and we leave operations to sort out the mess. Instead, I would love to see that data connected across the entire life cycle, but so that it remains trustworthy. If no one cares about that handover and those assets, then we lose energy efficiency. Well, it's going to cost us more. That's what I would like to see changed, is how we actually hand over the data to an owner. Now, I know I know there's some buzzwords in the industry, but I I want to see this become a living digital operations model. Some people may call that a digital twin, but I want to see a connected, trusted environment where owners can truly see their data. I believe this should be born at planning with assets defined and validated all along the way. That's is turning all of that together to change the industry.
I remember I was reading Stephen Covey's book, The 7 Habits. Well, I wrote an article in 2017. I forgot about it. It was the 7 habits of highly effective digital twins. When I got to, where we dove deeper and deeper into digital twins and that type of technology, I started saying, you know what? I need to find a way to combine the four C's of for an asset to my 7 habits. Here in a couple of weeks, you're gonna see a show with me and my Jacob. You're gonna sit down and I'm gonna bring out those 7 habits. But you're gonna laugh because those 7 habits back in 2017,
Wow.
2017, 2018, that is so current today.
We're not where we need to be. We have a chance right now, especially around assets, to change
Yeah.
the game. And we need to take full advantage of it. We have the opportunity right now to change the game. I think we've got to educate the owners that we can make their life a little easier. I hate to say this, but it's true. Is we have left a sour taste with the word BIM in the owner's mind. And we're still fighting that. Let's just be honest with it. And I'm guilty of it as well. I oversold. And so we've got to change that mentality for owners in how the process works. It goes more than just what's in that building.
What do they consider an asset?
Yep.
Are they only tracking things that are critical? You know what I mean? There are certain things that owners need to come to you guys and be able to have a conversation about what they want, what they need. When I talk to you, I always hear something different you tell me that I have to think about on how to revise what I'm doing. And man, I just want to tell you, thank you so much for being who you are, for being genuine, for being open to having conversations so that we together can try to help owners, even contractors who are having to talk to owners, to have better conversations.
Robert, I just appreciate you. We've known each other 3 or 4 years now. You've taught me patience and being able to look at data in different ways than I had before. As far as the industry, let's keep open mind and we've got to keep our traditional processes, but we've also got to make some new processes. And that's where I think like people like me and you and the people that you're going to have on this podcast can really make a change. It's not about software.
No.
It's about a thought process change. It's about a care. I got one more thing I want to say, Robert.
No, go for it.
You've humbled this guy in the last 2 weeks. And I thank you for all the calls, for all the texts. You've really hit my heart. So I thank you for everything.
I get people on here who going to tell a story, who going to help the industry. How can people connect with you if they want to connect to you?
So right now, LinkedIn, Mark Merg is my LinkedIn. I am working on that AeroSteward Guardian Group as a pro bono for some short-time consulting. There's no information on that on the web yet, but I'm here to help. I'm not going to say no to anyone over the next few weeks. I love this industry. Reach out on LinkedIn or ask someone for my cell phone number.
Okay. And folks, look, Mark is not one of those one podcast guys. I'm not going to let you get away that easy, but hey, Mark, my man, thank you. I love you. So we'll be all right.
I love you too, buddy.
Hey, have a good day, man. And we sure appreciate it. Thank you for joining me on the Digital Exchange. If today's conversation sparks something for you, share the episode with a colleague or someone in your network who's navigating the same challenges you are. And if you're enjoying the show, consider following or subscribing so you never miss an episode. Next week, we're exploring the evolving role of surveying in digital delivery and why accuracy at the start of a project determines everything that follows. Until then, keep building smarter.